company. Better than you and your stupid kids.
I'm Steve Reeves, the Fool of American Broadcasting, alongside the great Chris Morganti. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. Steve, tonight we got something a little bit different. We're going to take a look at some videos like we normally do, but in order to put them into context, I have to talk about something else I watched that we can't show because of copyright stuff.
Yeah, that's why.
But this was a Ken Burns documentary, and I know we've talked about this before. You're familiar with some of his works. Like we'll see here, there's the Hemingway one that I watched. That's what we're talking about tonight. But going way back, he did a great one on the Civil War, one on baseball, one on the national parks. There was one on jazz.
Nice.
They're all. I didn't see the jazz one, but the other ones I've seen, and they're all really good. For lack of a better term, I would say if you're a fan of Hemingway's, you would definitely want to check this out. But also, if you're just a fan of 20th century history, because Hemingway, his life spanned so much of it, at least the early half of the 20th century. He's so intertwined with so much of the world's history of that time. It would be interesting for you. Or if you're just a fan of the private lives of artists, I think you would find this interesting. I learned a lot about him that I didn't know. I just read his books. I didn't know. I didn't know much about his private life.
So you must have enjoyed his work.
Yeah. I was a big fan. I hadn't read anything in a long time because I think I read all his books between like the ages of 18 and 26, and not anything. I hadn't picked up anything since. So watching this, I was reminded of, they would read a passage from something. I'd be reminded of how much, how damn good he was. How about you? What's your experience with him?
Very limited. I'm obviously aware of the man. I know some things about his biography.
Okay.
But as far as his works, I've never read a word of it.
Oh, really? Because I thought the one time you told me that your favorite book was A Farewell to Arms, and I said, oh, the Hemingway novel or the Rick Allen biography?
No. All right.
Now, for those of you who are fans of auto racing, we also would have substituted the name Merle Bettenhausen in there. Yeah, there he is, old Southpaw Merle Bettenhausen. Lost his arm in a racing accident, and here he is about to make another bad decision by driving with a hook hand. Yeah. You know what the hardest part of being a one-armed race car driver is, Steve?
What's that?
Having to shift gears with your tongue. It makes for some difficult radio transmissions with the crew. Yeah, hey, Merle, we'd like you to pit for new tires on the next lap. Okay, Merle Bettenhausen sounds like a guy who coaches Little League and gets accused of diddling all the kids. Old Scoutmaster Merle has been arraigned on charges of inappropriate conduct with minors. I'm sorry, this has really gotten off track from what we want to talk about. Gotten off track, much like Merle did on the day he lost his arm. I really hope the Bettenhausen family never sees this.
The chances are they won't.
How many subscribers are we up to?
161.
Yeah, they're never going to see this. Do we have any more Merle Bettenhausen jokes? This is the most anyone's talked about him since 1975.
I believe that, yeah.
Yeah. See, now you told me when I first told you that Farewell to Arms Rick Allen joke that you thought it was hack and you didn't like it. This was years ago. But see, all it took was a couple years for me to flesh this out and make it about somebody else. Speaking of fleshing things out, I hear old Merle's due for a replacement prosthetic arm. All right, let's get back to what we're talking about. Our Ernest Hemingway documentary by Ken Burns. There's three things I would like to talk about with this documentary that I thought were interesting, and I think it'll be interesting to our viewers. The first one was that his parents were a little bit on the nutty side. His father eventually committed suicide. His mother was obsessed with making him and his older sister look like twins when they were younger. So she would dress them the same and get them the same haircuts. And it's theorized in this biography, this documentary, that's what gave him such a great perspective on writing a female character in his books, is that he had this kind of androgyny experience. I don't know. What do you think of that, Steve?
I don't know if that's necessarily true, because he had long hair
and wore a dress as a child. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I don't know. But there's more to it than that. He also kind of, in his, I don't know how they know this, I guess from former lovers, but there's some speculation that was also part of his sex life as he got older. Like he would like to play the female part while the woman played the male part, type of thing. So that just kind of adds something to that theory. No? Still not buying it?
Perhaps. I don't know, because from what I read, that was customary at the time.
Oh, okay.
That you would there wouldn't be any sort of children dressed identically, boy or girl. It was a Victorian tradition.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, then maybe there's nothing to that. I don't know. But another thing, the second thing that struck me was he twice worked as a war correspondent during the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s and during World War II. And man, it just struck me as, can you imagine? Because I think he's like probably America's greatest writer. And he's the guy you're getting your news from when you open up your newspaper. Like that's, compared to what we have now, where journalism is basically a dying art, that seems like that would be pretty amazing.
But also, I don't know, and I'm not trying to be contrary over here, but if he worked for a news service or a newspaper, he would have to stick to a certain style. So he was not able to discover himself as a writer.
Well, that's true. However, his style, I would say, because you never read him, his style would lend well to that. He's known for a very terse, staccatic style. I think that's the word. So it actually almost would lend itself to that. Being able to describe things well while also not being overly wordy. Yeah. Okay. And then the main thing I want to talk about that I took from this is, as we know, he ended his life by committing suicide. And because his father committed suicide, and he always said like his father was a coward, like for doing that. That's what he always said throughout his life. And then for him to end up doing the same thing, it seems hypocritical. But I didn't know any of this until I watched the documentary. It may have been more what we would know today as a concussion syndrome. He had it. I read something that said he had 9 concussions. I was able to confirm 6 of them that are documented in history. The first one was when he served in World War I. He was like 17, 18 at the time. And he served as an ambulance driver, but for the Red Cross, but he would be in the trenches. Like he wasn't behind the lines. He'd be like in the trenches passing out whatever stuff the Red Cross gives out to these guys. And he got hit by a mortar shell and he ended up in the hospital. That's what formed the basis of the book, A Farewell to Arms, was his experiences there. So that was concussion number 1. The second concussion came later when he was attempting to fix a skylight and it fell on his head. Now, I don't know, skylight, ceiling fan, I guess, something like that, you know?
All right.
The third one was during World War II, he was in London. And, you know, when the Blitz was going on, they would have blackouts at night where, you know, no light could be around. So he was drunk with his buddies and needed to get home. So he said to a guy, "Hey, you don't seem any drunker than me, so you drive." And they, of course, got in a car accident. So that's concussion number 3. Concussion number 4 was later on in the war. They were somewhere in Europe, and they came upon some Germans who fired an anti-tank round at them, which knocked him head first into a boulder. So that's concussion number 4.
What is he, Larry Fine?
I know. He does seem accident prone, doesn't he? But he wasn't a soldier, so he wouldn't have been wearing a helmet during any of this, you know, which probably would have prevented such a thing in that incident. The 5th one was a fishing boat accident after the war. I think he just fell off the boat and hit his head. And then finally, and this is the one that really did him in. This was in, I guess, the early 50s. He was in safari in Africa with his wife, and their plane crashed. So they were pretty banged up from that. But then a plane came to rescue them the next day and immediately crashed upon takeoff.
Jeez.
So 2 plane crashes in 2 days.
2 consecutive days. Now, Chris, even now, in that part of the world, when a plane lands successfully, the passengers applaud.
Really?
And maybe that's tradition. Maybe it's similar to my compliments to the chef.
Right.
But as a Westerner, it comes off as a lack of confidence in local piloting abilities.
Yeah.
It's not just gratitude, but surprise and relief. And quite frankly, I'd rather walk.
Yeah. I think most people would be a little bit leery if they found out their pilot went to an African pilot school.
Yes.
And no disrespect to anyone in that continent, but...
and Hemingway's own experience kind of lends itself to how that tradition may have begun. Plotting every time. I'll bet Hemingway even did it.
Yeah.
The rest of his life, anytime he was on a plane that landed, a clean landing, all right, bravo, we did it. We hit the goal.
Well, maybe, Steve, but I don't know that he would have even known he was on a plane later in life.
That's possible.
Yeah, he took a pretty big hit after that last concussion. And
you're saying his junior was already royally say-out?
Perhaps. That brings us to our first video. Now we're going to take a look at this, and I feel it's okay for me to say this, Steve, because it's been said about me by viewers of this show. In this clip, Hemingway seems R-worded.
Do you plan to go to Sweden to receive the award?
I'm sorry that I will not be able to go to Sweden on the orders of my doctor, who says that I'm doing very well after the serious internal injuries that I received in the air crashes, and that he believes that it would be very bad for me to interrupt the regime which I have been maintaining.
All right, pause it there, Jim. Now, what's going on here is he's just won the Nobel Prize for Literature for The Old Man and the Sea. And they wanted to film some remarks because he couldn't fly or didn't want to fly to
understandable
to Sweden, I guess is where they have this.
Fool me once.
So that's what's happening here. And you might say, hey, he doesn't sound that bad. Well, it gets worse. And also, one other thing I noticed here, and I didn't know this until I watched the documentary, he grew up in the Chicago suburbs. And listening to him here, I'd never heard him speak before. You get a very Chris Farley saying Ditka kind of thing if you listen to it. So let's watch the rest of this.
Go ahead. You're working on a new novel, are you not?
I have been working on a long novel, which is
now here he's reading off
in the vaults of the bank here in Havana. And I have been writing short stories, one of which seems to be, unfortunately or fortunately, grown into a novel.
That's good.
Pause it again.
Do you have a name?
We haven't gotten to where it gets worse yet, but I just want to point out this reporter that they sent out here. Hemingway was a tall guy. I don't know how tall, but this reporter seems like he would be as tall, if not for his terrible posture. Why is he slouching so much? It's disturbing. But all right, let's continue.
Hemingway sounds like, my captors are treating me well.
Yeah.
Your new novel?
I never have any names for anything that I publish until it is time to publish it, as I select a great many names and then reject those which are worthless. Period. Most of them are worthless. Period.
Could you tell me a short description of what your new novel is about?
The book that I am writing on at present is about Africa, its people, in the part that I know them, the animals, and the changes in Africa since I was there last. Period.
Well, may I thank you very much for your cooperation and your courtesy to National Broadcasting for this interview.
Thank you very much. I am grateful to the National Broadcasting Company for coming out here to the Finca.
Okay. Thanks very much, Senor. I certainly.
Yeah, so that's disturbing to watch, in my opinion. Now, when I sent you that clip, you looked at some of the YouTube comments that were part of this clip.
I did.
And do you want to tell people the gist of what was said there?
Well, some folks were alleging that this was made to be edited. He was recording this for editing. It was a dictation, more so than it was a live TV interview.
Yeah.
And it was going to be put on a record and I guess sent out to NBC radio stations.
Right. And I said to you, that's completely incorrect. For one thing, you would not send a reporter and a film crew out for that purpose. There'd be no need for that. For another, if that's the explanation for why he's pronouncing period and comma punctuation marks, why doesn't he do it through the whole thing then? Like, clearly that was a mistake. And that's a very serious mistake to be making.
May I suggest something else, though?
Okay.
Is it possible that he was fed up with the phoniness of it, like having to read from cue cards, and that was his way of making it clear, like his delivery and the punctuation was his way of making it clear that this is all ridiculous?
Well, no, because no one forced him to read from cue cards. He's doing that because he can't remember what he needed to say.
Okay.
Like, why would anyone make him read from cue? He was notoriously stubborn. Like, he would just refuse to do it if they said you have to read off the cue cards, and he didn't want to.
I buy that.
And finally, it's contradicted by the documentary itself. They said that once the Nobel people got this film and saw how bad a shape he was in, they said, why don't you just record some audio and edit it? And that's what was played at the ceremony, not this. So once they saw this, they didn't want to use it. So in any way, he did a whole different thing. So that's just, we pointed out before, people who just make stuff up on social media and how we try and counter that here on this show where we bring the truth to light. So other people making those comments might want to go watch Ralph Williams, where he just makes everything up as he goes along. But we don't do that here.
No, we don't. And if you do, that's the show for you.
Yeah.
The way I see it, the way we see it with Ralph Williams.
So, as I said, I found that disturbing, but I don't want to just dismiss it outright. Perhaps, Steve, he was on to something with this new style of talking. So I'm going to give it a whirl here. All right?
Okay.
All right. I would like to thank you all for watching tonight's show. Period. I would like to apologize for all the hurtful things I said about Merle Bettenhausen. Period. Sad face emoji. Bracket, insert subjunctive clause here, end bracket. If I were a better joke writer, comma, I would not have to be so mean to get a laugh. Period. So we'll see how that goes. And maybe he was on to something. Who knows? Let us know in the comments. All right, let's wrap up this Hemingway discussion with, as I said, he ended up committing suicide.
Well, I don't think we can say that, but
why not?
But we just did.
We can't say that word?
Yes, that word.
Oh, you got to be freaking kidding me.
Well, if you paid attention to these things, Chris, you would know. You would see people say different things. Like
I gave you my notes. You could have said we can't say this.
I didn't see that word in here.
Yeah, you're right. It's
unlived is something you can say. You can say he.
All right. Well, we'll bleep the word.
Slid down a sewer slide.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say unalived either. But now I've said it. People know what we're talking about when we have to go back and bleep that word so that we can be heard.
Okay. All right.
All right. So let's just because I said these concussions, I think, led to him committing this act that ended his life. Can I say that?
I believe you can.
Okay. Here's some corroboration from that from none other than his friend, the great Orson Welles.
It seems to be true. He was ultimately, of course, a tragic figure, wasn't he? I mean, in that his end was complete counterpoint.
Okay. You thought that was Dick Cavett?
No, I told you I don't know if I got the Dick Cavett clip.
Oh, okay.
He talked about this on the Dick Cavett show as well.
Okay, that's Michael Parkinson.
I found the best clip I could get of it, and it's a different interviewer, yes.
Okay.
Point to all that he'd stood for and written about. He was sick, but he did talk about suicide. You know, his father killed himself with a gun in the same way, and he talked to me about it several times. Really? In a sort of obsessive way. Yes. But he was a sick man. He wasn't merely he was not well mentally, you know. Yes. He's not to be judged as himself. In other words, the Hemingway we are talking about did not choose his death. Yes. He might have, but he wasn't that man. Yeah.
Now, Steve, lastly tonight, I wanted to address a couple behind-the-scenes things that happened on last week's show. First of all, I need to apologize to you and to the audience for me nose breathing into the microphone like this. Like the whole show, and probably shows before that.
Oh, no, there were some shows before that. Yeah, the last few.
I think
you've been loudly exhaling. It sounds like it's out of your nose.
It's out of my nose, which could be caused by 2 decades of American spirits catching up to me.
Or just breathing backwards.
I think what's happening is I adopted a new way of holding the microphone, and I believe that's what's causing the problem. So I've attempted to fix that tonight. I apologize to everyone. I apologize to you. You put a lot of work into that show last week, and for me, it was very difficult to watch just hearing that all the time.
Now, by that show, you mean the show where we showed any potential new viewers what we do and what they can expect?
Yes.
By watching the Reeves Company. If they subscribe, like, for example, the very next video, the very next episode will be something along the lines of what we've done here for 3 years.
Well, maybe we'll get, hey, what happened to the nose breathing? I really liked it. I don't know.
All right, so let's talk more about Hemingway.
Huh?
All right.
Now, lastly, Steve, there was something left in last week's video that normally we would have cut out, but it was left in because we thought it was funny. And it was you signaling for an edit. And we used to have one of those things that they use on a film set, the clapper things.
Yeah, the marker.
Yeah, but that's disappeared, or Wid's using it on stage as we speak as a prop. I don't know. But instead, we adopted a signal. And you'll see that in this next clip. You also get a good demonstration of me breathing through my nose.
Oh.
Or out my nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Now, for the first 24 or so episodes, we hadn't yet gone full screen on the clips that we watched. Instead,
all right, crack open a tepid Genesee and watch the picture
below us.
So that was the mistake.
Should I start that over? Okay. So for the last 24, I got to start over again. For the first 24.
So that's the signal that we've adopted here to signal that an edit needs to be made there.
Yeah, that's exactly where you need to end the cut.
Yeah. So if people are wondering, if they don't know where that comes from, it comes from a movie called Team America World Police. And here's actually a GIF a GIF of where that comes from. It was a movie entirely made with marionettes. And when they needed to signal for help, that was what they adopted as their distress signal. This is a very funny movie. I'm a huge fan of South Park. I was very excited to see this movie. And I took my wife, my former wife, to see it. And she said it was the stupidest thing she's ever laughed at. Which I found shocking because she'd gone with me many times to the Northeast Comedy Cabaret open mic night here in Philadelphia. And you know the level of stupidity that goes on there, Steve, which can still be funny. Now, years later, I took her to see Ted, the talking teddy bear movie.
Oh, yeah.
That Seth MacFarlane from Family Guy made. And that has a happy ending. But right before the happy ending, there's like a heartfelt, heart fraud moment. And she called that the stupidest thing she's ever cried at. Now, if you're noticing a pattern here, it's things that I like that my ex-wife thinks are stupid. So I thought, hey, it might be fun to take a look at a list of things I made of those. All the things that I like that my ex-wife thought were stupid. I made this scroll here of all these things. Let's just get started here. Oh, whoops! Oh, geez, it's come all unraveled.
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh. It looks like it's just rolled under one of the racks of props that Whit and John Kenzel have left here. So we'll have to do this another time.
Okay.
All right. I think we hit the goal, Steve.
I think we did too. In that case, thanks so much, Chris. This was entirely you, and I greatly appreciate.
Please don't put this all on me.
Oh, come on. A lot of fun stuff.
Oski wee wee, please.
Oski Wawa, Holy Bacchanal, Tigers eat 'em raw. We did it.
The Reese Company. Better than you and your stupid kid.